I tend to say humble is for the weak. And they go, what? And I go, when I say that, I don't mean actually being humble is for the weak. But what I do mean is that most people mistake being unconfident or uncourageous for being humble. And if they just let themselves be a little bit more confident, courageous, maybe even slightly arrogant, though there's a big difference between arrogance and confidence. And it is a subtle difference in some ways, and it is larger in others. But if you don't allow yourself to try,
Today's guest is Sam Malone, spoken voice and executive presence coach, the lead spoken voice lecturer in musical theatre at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, and also teaches at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts. His students now lead West End productions, including Hadestown, Mean Girls, Miserables, and more. Beyond the stage, Sam coaches executives and teams at companies such as Wagamamas, Eccentric, Shoesmiths. He blends spoken voice, executive presence, and nervous system informed practice to help leaders excel under pressure. Sam is passionate about empowering others to speak with confidence, authenticity, and impact in the world's toughest rooms. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks, Anita. How are you?
Great, thank you. I mean, I love this because spoken voice, I mean, let's face it, we all speak, but do we have any idea of how? I mean, in your field, it's so important. So, with that said, what's one of the most courageous things that you have done?
In terms of like the spoken voice world, or would you just say in general? Which would you prefer
In
to
general,
speak about?
really,
Yeah.
because we'll go on to what took you on your journey of your work.
Well, and it's funny because I think one of the most courageous things for me was actually leaving my corporate job. So I was in IT, healthcare, and oil and gas for about 10 to 15 years. I don't know the exact number. And then after a master's and an undergrad, then I switched careers and did another master's in voice. So I moved to the UK and basically said goodbye to everyone. I come back a few times a year to Canada. But otherwise, yeah, no, I think that was probably one of the most courageous things because I was leaving a career that was very comfortable, that I was good at, but I felt that I needed to do something that helped people more and had more of a calling. Yeah. So I think that was probably the biggest thing because in learning and development and stuff, I felt like I was teaching stuff that was meaningful to the business, but maybe not necessarily as meaningful to me and people's own development. So that was probably the biggest thing of courageous wise. It was really, it can be interesting.
Yeah, especially leaving the security of a corporate, assuming well-paid job to go into something that may actually have the unknown about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that you're right. The corporate job was very cushy, very easy. And I was good at it. But again, I didn't feel as fulfilled. But then sometimes I come back and I go, oh, Canada's so comfortable. And then I go, why did I choose this? And then other times I'm still like, but I don't. The one sentiment is, why did I choose this? And the other sentiment is, but I don't know if I could ever go back. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. I think, as we evolve, there's always a part of us that thinks, no, I can't go back there. I've developed, I've grown, and like you said, you want to help people. That was your calling. And I think, after we've got to a certain stage, we do want to do that. We want to help
Yes.
others, So, other than the bit you've told me, what took you on your journey of spoken voice and executive present coach? And first, tell me, what is spoken voice? Let's just unpack that a little.
Yeah, let's start with spoken voice then. Spoken voice is an acting practice.
Hmm.
So if you think of any kind of art, there's the art form, and then there's the practice of the craft around it. So
Hmm.
almost like if you think of basketball or soccer or football, you might call it football. Soccer is a UK word, just so you know. The etymology goes back to the UK. People always bug me about it. That's why. Um, but if you're working on your footwork or your dribbling, that's almost like the craft, and you're
Hmm.
shooting. As to the art form is how you play. And so spoken voice is not just public speaking. Actually, a lot of actors aren't very good at public speaking, but what they are good is at using their voice to engage an audience, to speak to the back of a theater without yelling, and really make something come to life, to captivate who they're talking to. And so spoken voice is that craft, almost like a safety net for the trapeze artist, and it catches the actor when something happens. Does that make sense? Like if they're stressed or
Absolutely.
they're nervous. Yeah, that's basically what the art form is. And even these students, when they first come to those drama schools like Central or RADA, they don't know what spoken voice work is, and it's actually really weird to them. But then when they start to learn how important and vital it is to their craft, their art form, and to their day-to-day lives, they go, oh my God, where's this been my whole life? Yeah. And then, oh, sorry, please, Anita.
Yeah, I was going to say that's brilliant. And I love your analogy with the net and loving this conversation. Do carry on.
Yeah. So the I was doing an undergrad in international business back in the day. So this is how I got into it. And I remember at the time, like I'm from a more rural-esque conservative city in Canada, and people would call me slurs from their window. Um, and just like driving by, and I'm
Mm.
much older than people think I am. And I think things like racial equality, LGBTQ, and all those different things have advanced in a lot of ways. But at the time, I was feeling unsafe. And so my voice teacher, because you're allowed to do a double major in Canada, I was a year away from a double major in acting. She became my voice teacher, and my voice professor, I said, would you teach me to shift my voice and my body if I felt unsafe? And she had to go away and think about it. She had to think about the ethics of, if I'm having someone change their voice, is it ethical?
Mm.
And then she realized to me, she said, only if you like don't do it to like change who you are. You do it out of necessity, etc. Shifting in those moments. But then what I realized is that my vocal expression, whether it's masculine, feminine, smart, whatever, is enough the way it is. And that
Mm.
the voice work changes you physically and vocally in ways I think that most people are unaware of. Yeah.
That's really interesting because I wouldn't have thought of anything like that. But I love the fact that, as long as it doesn't change you as a person, I like how she went about it. It's really beautiful.
Mm.
Yeah. So now you help others.
Yeah, and that's my goal. I think that in the spoken voice world, because it has been twofold. So typically it's been for the ruling elite
Hmm.
and or for actors, and sometimes actors were from wealthy families, not always, but most of the time back in
Hmm.
the day. And I think in the spoken voice world, a lot of the times it is still focused on theater, and the craft and the art form. But I think my goal is to help take into the self-help world. Now, general voice work can be applied to everyone, but then specifically you'd probably need to work with someone, and they might not use the same model I use because I've
Hmm.
created my own style. But I really think that it empowers people, because what I learned from that situation of flipping my voice or letting it shift is that all of those voices are coming from me, whether it's like really in my nose or really in my chest. It People be like, that's not your voice. And I'm like, well, whose voice is it then? Like, where's it coming from? And it's funny to see people's, I'd call it dissonance, where they think of you as one way, but the minute you start not acting the way they think of you, it gives them a level of dissonance. And I'm sure you found that in your own story, Anita, where you started being courageous and fearless. And then people started to have that dissonance being like, this isn't you, Anita. And you're like, but it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we've got to get out there and share our stories because, yeah, we've got to be courageous enough. Absolutely. And like you just said, people perceive you one way and then, you could change. And, you're talking about your voice changing, aren't there?
Mm. Well,
Yeah.
and even in day-to-day life, the way I
Mm,
would speak to my grandma was a
mm,
lot different than my brother, is a lot
mm,
different than if you were in a
mm.
courtroom, if you were with your best friend. It's called code switching, and we tend to switch depending on who we're speaking to. And it's also about fitting into groups. But I think when you realize that your voice and expression, because that's one of the ways that we let out our internal world to the rest of the world, once you realize that that's enough, and some people have been told it's not enough, that's when the world starts to change around you. You start to enter the world differently.
Yeah, I'm sure. Definitely. So, how did this go down with the people around you? Because from the courtroom to the stage, they're completely different areas of life.
Well, and I think you're right. And it's funny, I'm smiling because you are a good podcaster when you can ask a question like that. So, how did that change? Well, I think at first my parents were not necessarily thrilled about it. Like I said, I was in a cushy job and I had studied hard to get there. Like right now, I'm building my own business, and could it be more successful? Well, I think everyone's business could be more successful unless you're maybe like some of those top billionaires. But I think that, am I passionate? Yes. Am I enjoying it? Does it make a big difference in people's lives? Phenomenally. So
Mm.
I'm quite happy with it. But I think there was that dissonance at first, and now my parents are very on board and see the impact I'm having on different communities, different individuals.
And how do you believe it's important in daily life and the business world? Because sometimes we do have this persona in our working world. More and more, as life is going on, people are coming from their heart in their business as well now. And that's shown to be more more and more, they're having more courage to do that every day now because that's what people want. They want to see the human side. It's not the ruthless corporate business style anymore like it used to be. Sure, for some people it still is, but generally more and more it is. So daily life and business life can sometimes get, we can have different personas for it. Just
Yeah,
tell me
and
a bit about that.
I think you're right. The So I think traditionally
Hmm.
work and life were quite separate.
Hmm.
And you still see this in the corporate world where some people believe that their personal life should not be involved in their work life and vice versa. I think that's up to you and your environment, and how you feel in that environment. And that can take time to adjust to. But in terms of spoken voice, the way I would describe it is like this. My model, I start to focus on if your nervous system, so fight, flight, freeze, flop,
Hmm.
fawn, is stressed. And I know you had a guest recently about nervous system and neurology and all those different things. And if we're in those states, we don't have access to our higher level thinking. We might be scanning for danger all the time. You might be in a freeze state. I was recently talking with someone who was in a shock state, in a freeze state, and they just were immobilized. And that impacts their voice as well as their fascia, their connective tissue. So the connective tissue in the sense that if you're in a nervous system tight or stressed state, the body protects itself. And over time, your fascia holds what is called somatic memory. Your body might hold somatic memory, maybe not necessarily the fascia, but it holds that memory, and things like the body keeps score. So we're carrying that in our nervous system in our body, and that directly impacts the voice. So if you're constantly being told to speak up in a meeting, or they can't hear you, and or on the other end that people say that you're not good enough to hear, maybe parents or things like that, that impacts our nervous system and our body. And when I work with clients, on the lighter end of things, it might be things like body language. On the deeper end of things, like breathing on the floor, and no, I don't mean breath work, not the Wim Hof breath work, which is its own school and interesting. Ours,
Mhm.
we don't do as much like hyperventilation. How do I calm the nervous system so it's regulated and know that is my base point? How do I open my body? Because I work with a lot of people from different groups, and some people just carry it in their body, and you can see whether they're aware of it or not. Now, not everyone carries it, and I won't use the word trauma as like, there's debates on how you use it, capital T or small t trauma, but people carry things in their bodies. So the spoken voice work, unlike therapy and all those different modalities, is much more body focused. Now, a
Mhm.
lot of therapists want to work with me because they like what they'd call the body or somatic practice that we do. And so I'm now melding together the neurology, or the nervous system, sorry, and the connective tissue to open the voice so that you come into your natural power that you've always had, but you've been carrying maybe a habitual nervous system state, a fascia connective tissue, always protecting yourself and making yourself go into low status. So when you're in a day-to-day life, people hear you. When I enter a room, almost everyone hears me, not because I'm loud, but because my voice is open. There's no secrets. They're like, Sam, I can hear every word you say. That's not necessarily a bad thing in the corporate world or in your
Mhm.
day-to-day life. Yeah, that's how I'd approach it. Sorry, it's a bit long-winded.
No, no, that's beautiful because I love the fact that, you've got, like you just said, sorry, was it therapist you just said?
Well, yeah, so like therapy tends to be more
Mm.
mind-driven.
Mm.
I'm on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. So an example I'd give is when I work with these theater students, sometimes we say, you haven't entered the room yet. This is very theater speak. You haven't arrived. And they go, what do you mean? And then we do some breathing or voice work. And it's not necessarily just breathing. It's not necessarily making noise. Sometimes it is. A lot of the time it is to build the voice. Because if you can't make a sound without even words, just like a ha or a hey, if you can't do anger on a ha or a hey, you can't do it while speaking. So we're
Wow.
building the voice. But once the students do a bit of a warm up with me, then they arrive and they go, oh, I've arrived. And I'm like, yeah, welcome to the room.
Wow, that's so interesting. And you must have people that, you know, lack confidence. How does that all come about in how you help them and progress? Because let's face it, some of your students are now in, most famous West End productions. And, there must have been a whole process there. They haven't come to you ready, have they?
So I when I speak in, like, when I, to answer your question, so when the students arrive to when they leave after 3 years of training, if you could take videos, which I'm sure we could do, of before and after, it is completely different. Their voices are more open, their bodies are more open. I once had someone, I speak about this in my book, and I've said it as well on other interviews. I had someone from the tech realm come to see me at a show, our third year show. And before the show even started, there's all these actors and producers in the room. He goes, everyone in here is so confident in their body and voice. I was like, yeah, because most of them are probably actors and they've had the training. He's just like, it's crazy. He could see it, and he's very tech. That's that confident piece. And then so when I'm working in like the corporate world or politics or law, you might be a lawyer who can charge 5 grand an hour. I don't know if they do or don't. Like, that's a large number. I'm sure some do. But they, when we do that, if they have the 5 grand an hour and they're holding themselves in a way that doesn't speak that way, and I'm not just saying, okay, we'll fake it till you make it. We can all
Yeah.
smell if you're lying. Like, this is why a bad actor versus a good actor on stage. The good actor, we believe. Their body seems relaxed, even in heightened states. It seems truthful. It doesn't seem like an act. But if you fake it till you make it, which I'm on the fence about most of the time, I can tell you're bluffing, or I
Mhm.
can tell you're like hiding. And
Mhm.
that's, I think, why people in the corporate world or in general are all, sometimes I'll give people, when they're practicing, let's say their entrepreneurial pitch, or they're about to speak to 500 of their employees, I'll look at them and I'll give them my full focus, and they go, that's really unnerving. I don't know what it is, but like your full focus, because I'm so with them in my nervous system, my body and voice, they go, whoa, Sam's just like, it's really intense, but not in like a I'm trying to be powerful way, but I'm just with
Mhm.
them. Yeah.
Mhm. I think that's really great because that's what they probably need if they find it unnerving.
Definitely. And it's what gives them their status when they speak on stage. Not necessarily as I'm a better than you, but it's just, it's embodied leadership. Maybe that's the word I need to start using in my business, embodied leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is so true. It is. And I think we use that in the self-development world a lot. It's being embodied in anything, coming home to who you are and then bringing it out. And like you say, yeah, you can see people that, sometimes it has a place where people can fake it till you make it, but not necessarily the best way. Be honest with where you are and work from there. Mm.
Well, and this is where I think you're bang on that. Work from where you are. I think what the therapists like about my work and people in general is, if your connective tissue and nervous system, so let's say your nervous system is scanning, it's in a state of stress, typically, like that's what's being held in it, because that's all you've known from whatever age. And then your connective tissue is also tight. If they're working from they need to learn how to calm that regulate nervous system and open the connective tissue. And it's not always the most active exercise, but there are practical exercises that do that. And that's where people go. I had one student and even a client, they're like, well, so people aren't just about good looking, it's the way they carry themselves. But the way they carry themselves has to do with how open their body is and nervous system. And I said, you've got it. They understood what that meant, because I could be in a chair and just relaxing, but they might not realize they're relaxing. I did a arm release exercise with a client, and they were like, holy moly, my arm feels like, their shoulders were like this afterwards. And they're like, I didn't realize how much I'm holding. And so I had to release the other arm as well. For the viewers maybe not watching a YouTube video, I had one hand higher than the other because the shoulder had dropped about 4 inches. And then the other side dropped as well once we released the body.
So, what do you believe is one of the biggest obstacles stopping people from unlocking their true purpose? Because I know a lot of people that want to do something, but they stop themselves because they feel they're not good enough. It's all the self doubt. So, you have a lot of students that come to you and have made great strides in their lives. You must see a lot of this where confidence, um, you know, and things, they're good, but there's not the true potential being used, or they're hiding from themselves. I mean, I had that in my own life. So, what do you think, you know, stops people?
So I'm going to be a bit controversial on the first statement, but I'll preface that and then I'll give you the reason afterwards. And I say this to the students and it tends to shock them. I tend to say humble is for the weak.
Mm,
And they go, what?
mm,
And I go, when I say that, I don't mean actually being humble is for the weak. But what I do
mhm.
mean is that most people mistake being unconfident or uncourageous for being humble. And if they just let themselves be a little bit more confident, courageous, maybe even slightly arrogant, though there's a big difference between arrogance and confidence.
Mhm, mhm.
And it is a subtle difference in some ways, and it is larger in others. But if you don't allow yourself to try, some of the best athletes I know are the most arrogant people I know. And I used to be a competitive athlete. But you almost need that. Can they tone it down to be confident? Sure. But most people don't even allow themselves that space to go past that. They go, well, I'll never be heard in a meeting, or I'm always overlooked for that job. And in my opinion, when you start to do the spoken voice work with the nervous system and connective tissue, I've had clients say to me, Sam, like, I'm doing so much more speaking now. I've been promoted to a leadership role because a manager manages and they're good at their tasks. A leader inspires, but a lot of that's from their body and their voice. So there was a study from Harvard that said, I think it was 1,200 people were pitching for investment, and they only were watching the video. The people that they were researching were watching these 1,200 participants, and with surprising accuracy, they could tell without sound who would get investment.
Wow.
And again, that's probably the nervous system looking calm. There's a lot of investors who say we invest in the founder as much as the business,
Mhm.
because if you can't execute, then you won't be able to run the business. And that's why I'm saying embodied leadership. But then I'm not saying stick out your chest and puffing and bluffing. No. How do you be yourself? But how do we take up more physical and vocal space, not bluffing? So taking the physical space, like being more open in our bodies. But again, the nervous system will go haywire. So how do we calm it to do that? How do we open the body to do that? And then taking vocal space, if you're inaudible, we will not hear you. If you're mumbling, we'll think that you don't have clear thought. So how do we put our voice into the space? So I work with a bunch of founders on pitchings, and some of them literally say, can you pitch for me, Sam? Because they'll give me a line to say, and they'll go, you just make it sound so good, but I have the craft, and my voice is open, and my presence is open, and it's a constant thing to work on. But imagine taking that into your day-to-day life. And then, yes, okay, being humble can block you, but at the same time, maybe your body and nervous system are blocking you, being like, I've never been this confident, or you're scanning for danger and you go into a freeze state or a flop state. So that's what I would say are kind of the key to unblocking yourself.
That's really brilliant because, I mean, some of the things you said, they're really interesting because you wouldn't even think like body language plays such a big part in how we are perceived. I mean, what is it? You know, you have, you, I think the saying is your body speaks before you've actually opened your mouth.
Yes. And it's funny you should say that. So body language is like a a toe in the pool or the ocean of what I'd call acting movement.
Mhm.
So acting movement is like voice. They're the two main crafts for the actor and the acting form. So if you think of the movie Split with James McAvoy, he switches characters and he does it in an instant. His voice and body changes. That is pure movement style. So what is difficult for someone is if their nervous system and connective tissue are tight or scanning, it's hard for them to let go of their style of movement. And I would argue that deep movement practice allows people to switch. Now, for the work I want to do in the self-help community, I don't need you to not be yourself, but I can get you to be a less tense version of yourself and a more open voice person of yourself and a more calm nervous system of yourself. And that's when your world changes. Because you might not even know that you're carrying it. A lot of my clients and people don't know that they are, and they go, oh my gosh, the person in the meeting's no longer speaking over me.
Brilliant. So you did mention your book. Tell me about your book, Why They Can't Hear You. I know it's on pre-launch, but tell me more about your book. So, and when is it going to be out?
Yes. So it's called Why They Can't Hear You. And we're still working out the subtitle. So, but I think we're going to stick with Why They Can't Hear You, a practical guide to being heard. So I think there are a lot of people in the world who don't feel heard, whether, and that could be like literally anyone. So the obvious groups that we think of at first are women, global majority, LGBTQ, neurodiversity. But I actually do think there's cisgendered white men who are heterosexual who also don't feel heard. And so the thing about when we don't feel heard or we face biases about our voice is that's when we have more strong beliefs. That's when we start getting possibly aggressive, etc. And that could be any group. So if you look at all the conflicts around the world, there's a lot of groups not feeling heard or
Mm,
safe. And then guess what? They take more intense action. And so my book explores why our voices and bodies might close down, the biases we face, and how that roots in our body and our nervous system and our voice, and how then to start unraveling that to come back to our true power. And that's what I'm most interested in is the person in the bookstore who goes, oh my gosh, I keep getting overlooked for that manager role. I keep getting talked over by my family member.
mm,
No one's listening to me. And I want them to pick it up and go, ah, this is how I can change it. And it's practical. It's not like, okay, you're going to like think about, no, I want it to be in the body, practical. Here's the exercise. See how it goes for you. Now, again, every person's voice is different and needs something different. So it's very general. The more
mhm.
specific work would have to be with someone who's qualified to do that. But I think it can change people's lives.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds brilliant. So, where can they sign up for that?
Yeah, so the pre-sale is going to be through my website, so www.elevatevoice.co.uk/book.
Hmm.
Um, I'll send you the link, Anita, I think,
Yeah.
because it's just easier. Elevate's quite
Yeah.
difficult to spell.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think people can sign up there. It'll should be on Amazon's. There's a few bookstores which I'm not allowed to mention yet that it will be in. Um, but no, I think my hope is to take this practice, this craft that hasn't been for the world, and I truly believe it makes fundamental changes in the way people speak and move in the world, and that changes their life. And that's my whole goal with it is, okay, this is the change in my life. People find me intimidating, not in a negative way, but just because I'm so present and open. Well, you could be too. Like, there's
Yeah.
nothing stopping any of you. Yeah.
So excellent. I shall have all the links will be in the show notes. So please do go ahead and sign up. That'd be brilliant. So,
Yeah.
with all your experience in the business, entertainment world, and there's probably a lot of storytelling as well, which goes on. What's one of the most powerful lessons you've learned along your way?
That is a good question.
I'm sure there's many.
But yeah, I just like my brain's like going, it's like firing. Okay, let's talk about storytelling for a moment.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
sure.
one of the biggest problems people face in business is their ability to tell a story. Now, I get it. Sometimes it's financial numbers. Sometimes it's something very scientific.
Hmm.
And it depends on who you're speaking to. If you're speaking to another scientist or another finance person, that's great. You can speak the same
Absolutely.
lingo. But yeah, but sometimes you don't know the lingo. Like you'll hear people go KPI, and depending on the industry, it means something completely different. And
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So to me, your ability to tell a story, but it needs to be simplified and humanistic. So you could say uh, an, an AI founder group I'm working with, they're osteopaths, so like physiotherapists, and they are helping change wellness using data from your wearable devices. And they're called WellQ. And at the end of their pitch, they were going to be like, let's change health together. And I was like, it's good, but it doesn't let me connect as a listener.
Mm.
So we worked to re-switch that to have a bit more impact, to be a bit more humanistic, to be a bit more good with the storytelling. So I said to them, I was like, okay, try this. I said, when your health goes, everything goes. So we said, blah, 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 blah. Because we know that when your health goes, everything goes. Join us today. And everyone's like, whoa. And you could like feel the energy in the room. Right? And that's that power of a good story. And it can be done in anything. If you're like, if you say biotech, some people might know what it is, some people don't. If you say pro sci, again, people might know what it is, people might not. So I think it's about bringing that down to a humanistic level. So that'd be one of the lessons. I think the other lesson is, and I think it probably goes back to courage, following what's right for you, doing what's right for you. I do have a caveat on that, though. I do think I'm quite about balance. So I'm very Eastern in my approach to life, about balance. And I think when I think, is this right for me? I also pause and I think, or is this just a habitual reaction in my nervous system? So, okay, I feel unsafe. Okay, but am I unsafe, or is this a nervous system reaction that I typically have? Can I pause? Because if it is a nervous system, okay, if I calm it, do I still feel unsafe? So that's where it's like, what's right for me? But I do have the caveat of, is this a habit that's serving me, or is this actually some like an honest choice? Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah, I tend to be quite
Mm.
gray, not black and white on things. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
like that because absolutely things are never black and white. You got to have a bit of color in it.
yeah, totally. And the thing is, though, people will sometimes just enable your habit or narrative because that's what they think of you.
Mm.
And they go, well, of course you'll make that choice. And then it's kind of like the self-fulfilling prophecy. But
Yeah.
again, okay, what if we calmed our nervous system? Then let's make the choice. Let's let our body learn to be open so that when we're in this stressful meeting, there's a stress, but we know how to keep ourselves open and keep that power. Then let's make the choice. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, especially like, day to day. Sorry, day to day, we're rushing around, from one end to the other, whatever we've got on. Everyone's got full schedules, whether that's at home with the kids or whether it's in a powerful job. Just to have that moment to stop and like question yourself and say, actually, where is this coming from? Is it fear? Do I actually want this? I really loved your answer there. That was great.
Well,
Thank you.
and to what you just said, Anita, is that so I'm used to be a competitive athlete in martial arts, and the martial art that I'm most into right now and still compete in is Tai Chi. It's all about balance. Yes. And so what we're talking about there is if every day, and this is what I talk about in the book as well, yin yang theory,
Yeah.
is that if you're constantly doing stuff, busy, 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 that's yang energy. But the thing about yang energy is that you must burn something to make something. The wood is burned to make the fire. But then if you keep doing that, you're out of balance and you have nothing left. We need the yin energy. The water is pooling, and by pooling, it creates a reservoir to balance out the yang. And this is where, even with AI, we're getting things that are such a yang. AI is very yang. It's creation, it's efficiency, it's this.
Mm-hmm.
But yin and yang, when it's out of balance, will swing to the opposite direction, or you'll be out of balance and easy to control. And that's where, how in those decision making, are you too yang or are you in yin? Or are you too yin and not enough yang? And that's the duality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
sorry, I
love
got a
that.
bit Eastern on
Yeah,
you.
but I love that, and
Yeah.
it's getting that as much balance, I'll say it that way, as much balance as
Mm.
possible.
And when the body is open and the nervous system's open, you're
Mm.
in that balance, and then
Mm,
the voice comes out.
mm.
It doesn't. You don't need to react to the colleague, or maybe you do need to speak up, but then you're not blocking yourself either way.
And if everyone just remembers, it's all coming from within you,
Hmm.
the reaction, the response, it's all about you. It comes out of you. It's not just
Definitely.
like, yeah. So, yeah, I think that's fantastic. So, tell me more about your article in Euro News magazine.
Yeah, so this was a number of years ago, but it was when I started into voice work, and I'm actually on what is known as the Global Talent Visa. So I'm lucky enough to be up and coming in my uh, career, that I was able to stay in the UK as someone of possibility of talent. And the Euro News magazine was basically talking about how, again, spoken voice work is this field where no one's ever heard of it. It's how do you, a lot of the coaches I work with, like let's say executive coaches, they might work with the mindset stuff, and great, like I'll let them go do that. That's their expertise, not mine. Like, don't ask me, ask them. But when they come to me, then it's like, okay, but now how do we embody it? How do we open up our bodies to be in that grounded, and I mean like really grounded state, so that when you walk in the room, everyone can sense it? Or if you're going to speak on stage, how do we make sure everyone is with us? So, for example, the entrepreneurs I just worked with recently are about to pitch for hundreds of thousands of investments.
Mm,
And we got told the venue is changing. So instead of the audience sitting on the floor on chairs and then looking up at a stage, it's going to be flipped. It's going to be like an amphitheater. So like that of like almost a lecture hall.
mhm,
And I said to them, if this is a very technical stagecraft thing, maybe less spoken voice, but if you look at only the front row, and I made them all go stand in the back, the top. I said, who does it look like I'm speaking to? All of them. And I said, what about everyone up at the top? And they said, not at all. And it almost looks like you're depressed, because they had to play up and out, because they had to have everyone be part of it. A good musical theater person you will see on the West End, they will look to the top balconies and play up to them. Yes, sometimes they'll play front and center, but they want you to be with them. And that's one of those technical small things. I would say it's less spoken voicey and more fake it till you make it thing, but that is still important. That helps the audience be with you and want to invest. Because if the investor with all the money is sitting in the back row because he doesn't want to be noticed, or she doesn't want to be noticed, or they
mhm,
don't want to be noticed, you've completely lost them.
mm.
And that's one technical thing.
Definitely. And you've got to be able to understand that. And that's where you come in. Because if you're pitching to someone, just because the stage has changed, you've got to be able to adjust to that environment for sure.
Well, and there's so many times where I hear of people in a meeting room who, when they pitch an idea, people don't
Mm,
listen to them.
mm,
And then someone else might say it later and it was their idea. And then everyone's like, oh, that's a great idea. But again, to me, that screams that your body, your nervous system, your voice are blocking you. And it doesn't mean you have to yell, but once you're open, they all start to notice. And it's like men, women, global majority, LGBTQ, neurodiversity, they all tell me the same thing. I'm overlooked in this meeting, because everyone just thinks of pitching as pitching a script, or public speaking as standing on a stage. But it's like, actually, your progression in life doesn't happen in those moments. Those are like really important and they can accelerate growth. But it happens in your day to day, and how you are coming into contact with people in those moments is the drip feed that changes the perception and the way your life goes.
wow. So when I go on Dragon's Den, I'll be coming to you first.
Well, actually, I had someone who said that to me. She's like, I had been on Dragon's Den. I wish I had met you before. It's like, I'm sorry. I wasn't there.
Wow. Oh, it's so
Yeah.
brilliant. I'm loving this conversation.
Oh, me too.
So,
It's so much fun. No, I honestly, Anita, it's just been lovely to chat with you. Like, you seem so relaxed,
mm,
and it's an easier format than other people's. Like, here's my question. Here's my question. You're like, okay. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah.
So, if there was one key takeaway you want every listener to walk away with today, what would that be?
Okay. The key takeaway, and I'll keep it brief, is that your voice is enough. I don't care if you've been told that you're not smart enough, not pretty enough, not whatever enough. It is. And it will take your body and nervous system training and practice to get rid of that. The coaches and therapists can help you with the mental end, but I think working in that bodied end, that's where everything will change. But I want you to go away with that thought that it is enough. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely love that. I mean, it's absolutely love talking to you, Sam. I could carry on talking to you, but unfortunately, we've come to the end. So maybe come on another time.
Yeah, definitely. And I loved being here. It was great, Anita. I thought it was lovely chatting with you.
Oh, thank you so much. So, where can the listeners find you online and sign up for your book, Sam?
So it would be on elevatevoice.co.uk. So
Yeah.
www.elevatevoice.co.uk, and then / book for the pre-sale. I'm also on LinkedIn, Sam Malone. I'd have to look at it, so I'll send you the link to that as well. I am going to start doing more Instagram socials, but I think that's a whole other ball game, and social media is not my biggest strength.
Blessed. So,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing your insightful wisdom and knowledge with us today. And by doing so, I know you have helped so many others make a difference. I really want to acknowledge you for that, Sam Malone.
Thank you, Anita, and you as well. I loved listening to episodes on your podcast.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
So, we are all about Create the Courage to Be Fearless podcast here. What is your definition of courage?
So I had to think long and hard about this, but I tried to keep it as simple as possible. So to me, courage is doing or saying something that you feel is vulnerable and doing it anyways. That's what I think it is at its simplest form. And I don't know what to say more than that, but I think because I think courage is you're facing a big fear, and fear is usually driven by something that's vulnerable, like you could lose something physically, emotionally, etc. And so I think courage is doing it anyways.